Alright, so this is my explanation of code for the third assignment, the chat assignment. So first things first, with the client program, we're going to need sys for exiting threads, specifically socket for any of the socket connections going on, threading for multiple threads to handle either sending or receiving, and OS as well to exit the entire process if necessary. This is the send function here that takes a socket as a parameter and reads in a line from standard input, and also sends those messages through the socket. And if we're no longer receiving messages, then we're going to shut down the socket, close the socket, and then also exit the entire process, because this is the client program and we just want to shut everything down in the case that the last message that we sent is a 0-byte message. And then down here there's the main thread function that I just called main thread, that also takes a socket as a parameter, and it will first just print to the console, print to the client console, asking for the name of the user, and then it will pull for standard input, save that to a variable called name, send that name to the server, and then the server will handle that appropriately, as I'll show in just a minute for the server program. But while the server is doing that, we spawn a thread that I just called sender thread, with the target of this thread being, of course, the send function. We start that thread, and so now, along with our main thread function and our literal main thread of chat_client.py, we have running in another thread our send function that's going to be looking for any new messages from standard input. And so while that's happening, in the main thread function, we can receive any messages that might be sent to us from the server, aka any messages that were sent from other clients to the server that the server might be relaying to us. So yeah, we're looking to receive messages. While we are receiving a message, let's just print that to the client console and continue receiving any messages that there might be from the server. And then this is just the kind of real main real main function of the program, that will run the usage function if the length of sys.argv is less than 2, gets our port from the command line arguments, creates our client socket, tries to make a connection, lets the console know that we're trying to make a connection. If it doesn't make a connection, we just say make sure that the server is running, we exit, and then right at the bottom of all this we start the main thread function, which, as I explained earlier, runs send in a separate thread, etc., etc. In chat server, we'll need pretty much the same imports as client, and then rather than the send being the kind of target of our threads as it was for client, for server we'll have just a function called client thread that will be the target of our threads, that takes a socket that I called sender, and all this function will do is loop infinitely, and it will look for any messages that are sent from any of the connected clients. So the server will be receiving those messages from any of those senders, and if we did receive a message, then we want to start to format that message appropriately so that it can be relayed to any other connected clients. As per the guidelines of the assignment, we want to have the name and then colon preceding the actual message contents. So we do that. I have a dictionary called socket name dict, which is just a dictionary where the keys are socket objects and the values are the names of the client that the client sent over to the server. So that way we can easily access the name of the user that's sending this message, because it's matched to the socket object that we're working with, that I called sender once again. So we format that message appropriately, and then we can pass that message to our relay messages function, which I will get to in just a moment. But otherwise, if we didn't receive anything, if message is 0 bytes, then let's remove the sender socket from our socket name dict, because that means, you know, that this socket has been closed. We don't want it to stay in our, what is essentially our list of active connections, and we want to shut down our socket on the server side and close that socket, and sys.exit to exit just this client thread. We don't want to exit the entire program, obviously, because that would close down our server, and then that might mess up any other active active clients. So we just want to close this client thread that we have. And down below we see that relay messages function mentioned earlier that just takes a socket that I once again called sender and the message that we're going to be relaying. And all this does is loop through the socket name dictionary. So looping through just the keys of the socket name dictionary, which are the socket objects. And as long as that socket that we're currently examining in the loop is not equal to the person that sent this message that we're trying to relay, then let's send it to that socket. And then down here in main, once again printing usage if we have less than 2 command line arguments. We get the port, we create a listener socket, which is just the server socket, bind it, listened for 100 clients, just because I didn't know how many we might be working with here. And then this is where our socket name dictionary is defined. And then this is also a while loop down here that runs infinitely, that is accepting any incoming connections that we might be getting, and also then receiving a single message, which we know will be the name, because we know that the first message that any of the clients will be sending is the name. And then we can use that name to form our dictionary, and from there we're going to start a thread, which actually I should have called this client thread, really, because that's what it's targeting. I think, yeah, I used to have it differently, but really all this thread down here does is it targets the client thread function, and for each client that connects to the server, that client is going to have their own thread that will target this client thread function. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And if I go over to LXLE, can run test 1. It should pass as long as nothing's changed. Alright, yep, test 1 terminated properly, and then test 2 will eventually terminate properly with the 17 points, but I won't wait and let it go until then, because this video is probably long. So yeah, that's it.